Hey everybody. Today I want to talk about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, specifically the first live-action movie. There have been numerous movies that we could look at and compare to the comic, but I want to narrow this down because rather than just look at the original run of TMNT comics that paved the way for this movie and seeing what they took and how it evolved for the silver screen, etc., I wanted to do something a little different. I want to put a twist in it to keep things sort of interesting. So instead of comparing the comics to the movie, I want to compare the movie to the comic adaptation of the movie. And to make it extra fun, I have this oversized hardcover edition that IDW put out a few years ago. Bet you didn't see that one coming. Now, why would we do that? Most comic adaptations are usually or stereotypically considered trash. I mean, that's an oversimplification. There are certainly exceptions to every rule, like the movie adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula that was drawn by Hellboy creator Mike Mignola. Yeah, that's probably going to be a future episode down the road of graphic adaptations right there. In a similar fashion, this comic adaptation of the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie is pretty special, so let's get into it. Eastman and Laird create the Turtles in 1984 and proceed to write and draw the book together for the first dozen or so issues. As their studio grows, Mirage picks up other artists who are able to fill in issues as the duo become bogged down with licensing deals and animated series and live-action movies. And some of the fill-in issues are really actually pretty cool, exploding the Turtles conceptually and stylistically. Sometimes it works incredibly well, other times not so much. But Turtle fans will tell you one of the great things about the franchise is that there's something here for everybody, from the macro of different series and eras of movies and shows to the different stories they can tell, right down to which of the four Turtles you personally identify with, especially at this point in Turtles history. I mean, you can love the original comic run, the Peter Laird run, the Image run, the IDW run, the Last Ronin, the Archie comics, the 80s cartoon, the 2000s animated series, the Nickelodeon show, the live-action movies, the CG movies. It is endless and cross-generational. But today, we are looking at the first movie and the comic adaptation published by Archie, which is the highest-selling single comic of their entire publishing history. And what makes it so special is that Eastman and Laird did the adaptation themselves. So if you know Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle history, there's only 3 specific runs of the books that they did together in that original run. The first dozen or so issues, then the highest point in my opinion, the Return to New York storyline, and then the last 15 issues for the City at War storyline. So this is a little extra pocket of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle history by the creators themselves. And I would say it's closest in art style to the Return to New York storyline. Out of all of the movies, 5 live action, 2 animated, I think the first one still gets the praise and accolades, and I think it's deserved. It's still the darkest. It had the vision to be dark, and it shows how effective and smart that was because we're still praising that edge that it had over 30 years later. And without the advent of CGI, the prospect of creating turtles practically is still mind-blowing. Now, if you didn't know, the Turtles themselves were designed by Jim Henson, and the movie studio was the Hong Kong-based Golden Harvest Studios, best known for their Jackie Chan movies, among others. In the IDW-published Autobiography, which I happen to have a copy of right here, Eastman says, working on the illustrated adaptation was a bit bizarre on a variety of levels, the main one being the retelling and redrawing of a lot of the original story points. It was great working on the film's screenplay with Steve Barron and Todd Langdon. We all agreed the meat for the film was in Book 1, the Leonardo one-shot, Book 10 and 11, and bits and pieces from some of the others. The movie came out great, but when I was working through the thumbnails, it felt sort of like it was happening to someone else and I was watching it from the next room. I also worked out a 48-page one for Archie Comics and a 60-page version for Mirage Studios. It's pretty unique to have the creator retell the story through the lens of the theatrical adaptation, but the boys really did a great job here. The dialogue is nearly word for word, which was Laird's job, and Eastman did all the panel layouts.
Oh, but no anchovies, and I mean no anchovies. You put anchovies on this thing and you're in big trouble, okay?
I can't let you know.
That'll do, and the clock's ticking, dude.
I suggest we all meditate now on the events of this evening.
Yeah! Yeah! Yes, friend! friends, the new Turbo Ginsu. Woohoo! It dices, it slices, and yet makes French fries in 3 different. Whoops.
Kids.
You can see in the hardcover that they've included sketches for every single page. I'll put this on the screen in a better way, but first half of it is the actual adaptation, and the second half is the adaptation completely done in thumbnails. You can see in the hardcover they've included the sketches for every single page of the book. And Eastman was really in his Frank Miller bag of tricks at this time, giving us the craziest panel breakdowns on each page. The effort is visible, unlike other comic book adaptations, actually including Secret of the Ooze. If I'll put up some pictures here, it just didn't look like it's got the same amount of love and attention. I could be wrong, but I think this is also the first time Eastman and Laird make a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle book of their own with the individually colored bandanas instead of them all being red. And speaking of colors, I read some criticism of IDW's coloring online and didn't really understand where that was coming from, and then I turned the page and see this oddly colored Shredder with the red hood ornament thing on his helmet, which I was like, okay, I get it. And there's just one other gripe that I have. When looking at the credits, there's a gap between Kevin Eastman's layouts and the ink. Now, online, I see a credit for finishing pencils by Jim Lawson, but there's no credit anywhere on the IDW book. I'm sure it was just an oversight, or perhaps the credit to Jim Lawson was a mistake online, but I don't think it is because there's still no credit for the pencils on this book. Now, most of the book is word for word to the script, as I said, but I also thought it was pretty cool in this version that April is drawn how she looks in the comic book as opposed to the likeness of the actress in the movie. Of course, that's how the turtles are drawn as well. And that's what makes it so cool, seeing those key moments and lines from the movie that you grew up with, and they're spot on, but you're seeing it through the lens of the comic creators themselves. Probably the most interesting additions to the script would be the introduction of Casey Jones, who's shown to be watching the news in April as she's reporting on all the crime before he gets up inspired by that newscast to do something about it, which would lead to our meet cute between him and Raph in the park with the muggers. And considering they helped to write the script, it's easy to imagine this being a scene that just didn't make it to the screen. There are a few extra pages added to the extended Mirage 60-page edition that pad out the pacing and slow it down a little bit for readers. These could be splash pages that serve no story purpose but give us more breathing time and atmosphere. The last page is also a small highlight where, after the adventure's over, we see April trying to sell the rights to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to a company, a comic publisher actually, and she's laughed out of the building as if the concept's too ridiculous. So a little wink and nod moment to acknowledge how absurd their journey was. So there we have it, the whole thing. Classic movie, a little gem of a comic book, something to track down at the next convention for the hardcore turtle fan. And I'll see you guys next time.